you might want to put a ribbon microphone on a guitar cabinet in addition to a dynamic microphone so that you can blend the two sounds together.
Yeah.
In voiceover, we don't really have much need to pick flavors of microphones for those reasons, unless you're really doing something that fits into the grand scheme of character read, or into, you want some kind of retro 50s sound, right? Then it might be worth having a microphone that suits that need, but it's pretty rare that we audition that way. And of course, our job really is auditioning to get the job, and getting a job is kind of gravy.
Exactly.
I'm gonna quickly jump on one thing you mentioned there, Dan. And you didn't come right out and say it, but something I hear a lot that I actually don't agree with is that you should make a trip to the local music store and sit down with a bunch of microphones in front of you and pick which one you think sounds best. And the reason that I don't agree with that practice for most people is because most people don't have the ears trained enough to make that decision in the first place.
Sure.
And beyond that, they're not working in their own environment, and we know the environment makes more of a difference than the mic. So I'm a big proponent in getting with people who are doing this professionally, successfully, and finding out what has worked for a lot of people. The standards are a standard for a reason, and often, even if they're not the absolute best choice, they're usually not the wrong choice. You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ideally, if you are going to make that kind of blind comparison, it should be something that you do in your own booth at home. So it's not necessarily going out to a music store and doing it. And of course, I realize that presents some challenges. But ideally, if you can do that in your own home and then, or in your own home studio, and then most of the time when I have done shootouts, people are sending me files that they've recorded in their own home studio, and I'll listen to them on this end, and they won't tell me what microphone it is, and I will choose. Exactly right.
Yeah. Getting the expert ears upon that, I think, is an important component to choosing that right set of glasses to match your analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're going to be listening to that, like you said, in an acoustically treated room with good monitors and things like that, and potentially in an environment in a similar way to possibly future clients that you as a voice actor will work with. So whereas you may hear yourself on your own headphones, that's not necessarily how your clients are going to listen to you in the future. So getting that analysis is absolutely crucial. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's really the recorded sound, that's where you do the shootout part. Is to really, after you record it onto a computer of some kind, laptop or whatever, even if you bring a little Tascam or have a little Tascam thing with you because you haven't bought anything yet, I mean, whatever, or you're at somebody else's studio. Listen back to the recorded sound, and that's where you make the decision, not as you're listening to it in headphones necessarily.
Sure.
So the real goal with a lot of microphone manufacturers is that they produce a mic that gives you a relatively flat response. So it's going to be even. It doesn't give you any bumps on the frequency spectrum. So it represents the sound that's being pumped into it. It can reproduce that as naturally and realistically as possible. But then there are other mics that you may buy for certain characteristics. And that's why people fetishize older mics, tube mics and things like that. But you can actually research these frequency responses online before you actually even go into the store.
I recommend that all the time. I definitely think that frequency response charts are a really helpful tool. It's not going to give you obviously it's like looking at a studio monitor in a picture. You can look at these different speakers and you can say, oh, that one's pretty, You can look at the frequency response chart and it's going to give you somewhat of an idea of what you can expect it to sound like. But, generally speaking, one of the things about, for instance, a TLM 103 that I like compared to the Rode is that the frequency response chart on a TLM 103 has a bump at around 3.5. That's where it starts to rise. Whereas the Rode NT1A has a bump around 1K. Now, to me, 1K is not a pleasant sound.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just a personal preference. I know a lot of people use that mic and they use it successfully.